You're listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. In this episode, we're featuring the Understanding Cost of Goods for the Mathematically Anxious, and that was presented at Children's Institute 2024 in Cincinnati.
Thank you for coming. This is the session for Understanding Cost of Goods Sold for Mathematically Anxious, which I think is everybody. My name is P.K. Sindhwa. Oh, before we do that, we have antitrust guidelines, which I'm sure everybody heard lots of times. We cannot discuss pricing policies, or no discussion of boycotts or dividing up the market. Okay. This session will teach booksellers how to calculate cost of goods sold and maximize gross profit or margin. Panelists will lay foundation for understanding cost of goods sold so everybody can compare, confidently calculate cost of goods sold. The data here is based on ABACUS, my favorite subject. Yes. And okay, by the way, those of you know, my name is P.K. Sindhwa, and I'm the CFO for American Booksellers Association.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Ryan, and I'm the buyer at Watermark Books and Cafe in Wichita, Kansas.
My name's Josh Christie. I'm one of the owners of Print, a bookstore in Portland, Maine.
I'm Tegan Tagani with Queen Anne Book Company in Seattle, and I'm our children's buyer.
Okay. So we will start with the definition. Cost of goods sold. So I'm going to start with Rebecca to go over the definition of cost of goods sold.
Right, so cost of goods sold is the amount of your starting inventory plus the amount of inventory you purchased over a given period of time minus the ending inventory at the end of that period of time. So what you're looking at is really wanting to make sure that you're buying at as low of a price as you can, so you maximize your margin. So if you think about if you start at, if you start at 100 items, and then you purchase 100 more, so you've got 200 items, but then at the end of a year you have 99 items, then your margin, then your cost of goods is 101. So.
Yeah. I mean, that pretty much nails it. It's just a formula. So we'll have an example a little bit later using dollar numbers. So if you start with $100,000 of inventory on January 1st, and you buy $25,000 of inventory to add to that as you go through the year, then throughout the year you sell $71,000 worth of inventory, leaves you with $54,000 as your cost of goods at the end of the year. So. Just as you said, it's what you start with plus what you add on minus what you've sold.
And as thinking about mathematical anxiety, one of the things I use to ground myself is my units. And so just thinking, this is dollars. You know dollars. You see them every day, and there's no reason to panic. So easy peasy.
I want to add something. For the sake of this discussion, we are saying this is based on accrual accounting. So I am assuming that everybody is using accrual. So when I say accrual accounting, in accounting there are two methods. One is you accrue everything that the day you buy it is the day you sell it is when it counts. Instead of cash accounting, the cash accounting is the day you pay, you cut the check, that's when you expense it. It is very difficult to calculate your true cost of goods sold if you have a brick and mortar or store where you have inventory. So I encourage everybody to use accrual accounting. So in other words, sometimes you get the book on the last day of the month, but you don't get the invoice till it is next month. So in accrual accounting, the expenses are the day they occur, not the day you pay. Okay. Thank you. All right. Cost of goods sold category.
Yeah, so with books, obviously the price is printed right on the back of the cover or on the inside flap. We all know that. And we get whatever discount the publishers are going to give us. And we're not really supposed to talk about that. But with sidelines, you can set your margin at whatever works best for your store. So this is really an opportunity to kind of offset some of those lower margins, those higher cost of goods you're getting from books. If you can bring in a couple extra gift items and then bump up that margin a little higher to kind of help you out with your bottom line.
Yeah, and conversely, on the book side, we all tend to, not talking about specifics for the reasons on that first slide anyway, we all tend to think of what our average discount is from publishers, and through promotions, through working with reps, there's ways to buff that up by 1 or 2%, sometimes even more than that, and that can be really useful for your bottom line.
Okay, Jake?
I don't have anything to add.
Yeah. One of the things, I love to quote ABACUS everywhere, the cost of goods sold average was 18% for non-book items last year. So make sure that, that your percentage of non-book items is at least that. Okay.
And so that's your percentage of your sales, right?
Percentage
like
of-
18% of the things you sold in your store were non-book items?
Were
Is that-
non-book items, yeah.
Just to clarify.
Yeah.
See, units. I love units.
Yeah. Cost of goods sold, based on 22 ABACUS, was 53.3%. In other words, every $100 you spend, every $100 of sales, $53.30 went towards cost of goods sold, which is the highest expense you will have. So you know how important it is to make sure you save everywhere.
Yeah, so when thinking about your bottom line and profit for your store, if you're paying over half of what you're making for everything that goes out the door, anything you can do to get that number down a little bit, like if you can equal it out a little bit more, like with every decision that goes into your buying or restocking, things like that, every decision you make, if you can even lower it even 1 or 2 or 3 percentage points, it's going to make a big difference at the end of the year.
I think about it we think about it in our everyday personal lives of thinking of shopping sales, coupon clipping, that kind of thing. And I think it's similar for me when I'm buying for the store, that I'm kind of thinking, what do I absolutely need to spend on now? And what can I sell through and then spend on it later? Because part of it is also what's selling, right? Of like, we want to make sure that we're getting rid of things and not holding on to things that aren't making us money.
Okay. Gross profit, or also known as gross margin, which is the first thing your accountant has calculated for you, sales minus cost of goods sold, which...
And just a reminder that all of these slides are in your app, so you can look at these later and review it and say to myself, what was that definition? Let's practice.
So again, if we can get the 46.7% net of sales a little higher to 50, we'll be in good shape. So like Tegan was saying, making smart decisions on the buying end to take advantage of any little thing we can do, which we're going to talk about in a minute, to get the cost down is going to really help out. Not stockpiling tons of inventory sitting around that's not moving, buying kind of on a need-to-buy basis, taking advantage of publisher specials where we can. We're going to get into that a little later, too.
Okay. And then another definition of profit is net profit. Now, for the sake of this session, we are talking about net profit before taxes, since everybody's tax situation is different. So net profit is your gross profit, in other words, your sales minus your cost of goods sold, minus all other expenses such as credit card expense, payroll, bigger one, payroll and rent, two of the biggest expenses, and so that becomes your net profit before taxes. Okay. All right, so we went through this cost of goods sold. Here's the mathematical definition, which they both explained anyway. So if you had $100,000 worth of inventory in the beginning, you bought $25,000 and you used $71,000 worth of inventory, your cost of goods sold is $4,000. Now,
Can we just pause and let everyone absorb that?
Yeah.
And like, just look at that. Does that make sense? Raise your hand if it makes sense. And it's okay if it doesn't, because you can go back to it and think it through again. Sorry, I take the anxiety thing very seriously. I tutor, and I feel like sometimes we just need a moment to say, all right, good, thank you.
Yeah, I think just to take this point too, like cost of goods and math in general can be really scary, but this is a formula with 3 numbers that you can pull from your POS. And really, I think for like level setting purposes, what we want to do with this panel, make sure you have the formula so you can calculate that using your POS. But what we really want to cover is getting your margins up and your cost of goods down. And that's something I think we can all understand a little more intrinsically.
And to really just walk through these numbers now that we have them on the screen. So the $100,000 is your starting inventory. So let's say on January 1st, I had $100,000 worth of books in my store. And let's say over the next year, miraculously, I only spent $25,000 extra dollars on books. And then on December 31st, I had $71,000. So $71,000 is the ending inventory. So over a course of the year, I started with $100,000. I purchased $25,000 additional dollars worth of books. At the end of the year, I have $71,000 worth of books. What I have spent on those books that I sold for the year was $54,000.
yeah, and 54 is, the cost of goods sold is what you, cost associated with books that you sold. Okay. This is another illustration of the same thing. The
This is the little blocks.
blocks.
Want a kind of a visual example?
Yeah.
Do you need a clarification?
Yeah, so
Do you mind coming up to the
Yvonne.
mic, just because we are recording this and we want to make sure that all of the, and we will have a question and answer session, but it seemed like this was a specific clarification. Thank you.
So when it sounds to me that you only ever look at cost of goods at the beginning of the year and the end of the year, but aren't you calculating them throughout the year?
Oh,
Right.
absolutely.
For this example, where I was just
Okay.
using a period of time, but
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Every month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can think of it kind of like how you think about turn, in that typically for our store, we look at turn like first of the year to end of the year, but you can calculate it really on any basis, and
Yeah.
you can look at this the same way.
And sometimes you might be looking at it because you're having a buyer's meeting, or, you're meeting with sales reps and you want to make sure what the budgeting, that session that's coming up, you want to just be clear about your numbers before you go into your budgeting. So it's a really good point that you can do this at any time of the year, but we're kind of talking about big picture just to make it as digestible as
You
possible.
could do
to
it for the
begin.
week, you could do it for the day.
Yeah. Okay. Every penny you save on cost of goods sold goes to the bottom line. So as and we can emphasize even more that, whatever you can save on cost of goods sold, because rest of your expenses, you're going to spend anyway, your payroll, your rent is. And yes, there are places you could earn an expense as well, but everything you save on cost of goods sold directly impacts your bottom line.
A penny saved is a penny earned.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, when we're thinking about every penny saved as a penny earned, even those little like 1-2% differences in discounts can really make a big difference. We're not talking about discounts, obviously. But that said, when we were talking about putting this session together, we were kind of talking about maybe there are some stores that are still only exclusively ordering from Ingram Wholesale and don't have like direct accounts with publishers specifically. And that is the number one step, I would say, that can make a big difference right away, because you're going to get one discount from Ingram and you're going to get a different discount that is better from publishers directly. We're not talking about discounts, but you will get a better discount from the publishers. So if you haven't opened up direct accounts with publishers, I would say at least start with Penguin Random House. They publish the hugest majority of the books, and then start with some of the other big five, Harper and Macmillan. And that's going to make a big difference right away, first thing.
And while we're not talking about discounts, like even within publishers, I agree that like publisher direct ordering is one of the best ways to reduce your cost of goods. There are some publishers where whether you order through their website versus through a rep versus on a phone, just a phone into customer service is a percentage point or two, which adds up a lot at the end of the day, especially if you have shifted your ordering exclusively or almost exclusively to direct with publishers.
And I'm going to point out a cost that happens on Ingram and sometimes happens on other publishers. Make your minimums so you don't have to pay shipping. So make sure you understand the terms, that in the buyer's handbook on the ABA website, there should be terms available. If they aren't, please make sure that you ask about them so that you know that you're making the most of every order, that you are not kind of frittering away your important money on shipping, because that is a cost. And and even with Ingram, making sure you're ordering from warehouses in a good way. And even Ingram does have promos. I know that sometimes we have our regional catalog holiday titles have a promo. And so thinking about using promos, shopping sales, can really help in the sense of using promos. And for me, I think that one of the ways that I think about that is thinking about my restock default, that every day we do a restock at my store, that we look at what's sold and we say, what am I going to get in and from where? And for a while, it was kind of like, oh, get it in from, get it in from Ingram because we want to get it quickly, because our shelves were kind of, we didn't have a lot on our shelves when we first opened. But as you get a mature inventory, you can wait to get things in later. And so now our default is restock it from the publisher unless it's something we need right away. So that was what we were saying about the buying as you need it. Does anybody?
And even elaborating on buying it directly from publishers for restock. So Tegan was mentioning promos. Most publishers have extra discount backlist promos going on throughout the year during specific periods of time, and especially around late fall, Christmas time. Everybody is doing their Indies First holiday promos, so that's a really good time to stock up. So what works for me for my store when I'm looking at the restock every day is I kind of have 2 POs going in draft for each publisher. I have one for stuff I want right now, like as soon as I can put together the minimum for that publisher, and then I have a second one for the next time they have a backlist promo coming up. These are things that are kind of core backlist, but I don't need it in the next week, but I do need it in the next couple of months the next time, and if I can save an extra 2 or 3% with a backlist promo, that's what I'm going to do. And then I look ahead so I don't fritter away and waste those backlist promos. I look ahead at like, what author events do I have coming up? I'm going to put that author's backlist onto a backlist promo and get it when I'm ready to do that promo. I'm not going to wait until the last minute when I don't have a backlist promo to use to get that author's list. And likewise with book fairs. If I've got a book fair coming up, I know I'm going to want to be stocking up on these books. I'm going to put them on a backlist promo order so I can kind of keep that going throughout the year. Do we have some special event I want to put together a display for summertime reading? I'm going to So as much as possible, I'm going to put those on backlist promo orders and then take advantage of those publisher extra discounts. And I do keep a file to keep them all organized. Everybody has a little specific promo code to put in when you place the order. So I try to keep those as organized as I can so that I'm constantly taking advantage of those extra couple of percentage points every day.
And Rebecca, are you the only buyer for your store?
Oh, good point. I have a children's buyer as well, and it's important that we work together on all of this stuff.
And Rebecca mentioned having a file, and if you're here because you're interested in math, you might also be interested in spreadsheets. I love spreadsheets. Spreadsheet is a great way to keep track of promo codes usually because, as Rebecca said, they're usually just one word or a short code. And the great thing for a spreadsheet for me is you can have a column with the expiration date, sort it by that, and it's very easy to add stuff as you get it from reps and take stuff off once that expires. And to keep track of, oh, this is about to expire. Do I need inventory from this publisher for X, Y, or Z?
And communicating children's buyer to adult buyer in our store, we try to make the most of the promos in the sense that if there's a publisher where we can combine our orders together and get that good discount together on Torrin's books and my books, we really should take advantage of that. And sometimes because of our schedules, we're not necessarily in the office at the same time able to be like, hey, I'm going to send that Simon & Schuster order. Do you want to combine it now? So we keep track of that on a Google document so we can be looking at that from wherever and understanding where we are. And if there are limitations of like this can only be used once by each division, we have a little place where we kind of like highlight, okay, I've used mine, and then we can keep track of that just because there's so many details in this business and so many details in our lives that I need to make some things easy. And I think a Google document really helps us.
And going back to Josh's love of spreadsheets, the ABA does a great job of putting together a spreadsheet for all of those Indies First promos together in one spot that's always on bookweb.org. Usually starts around October, so be on the lookout for that. And usually the notification that that's put together is in Bookselling This Week when it's ready to go.
Okay. Well, I just want to emphasize, when you understand cost of goods sold, you buy smarter, you restock smarter. So now, cost of goods sold also goes in hand with turns. It's so important to keep your inventory fresh. Your books sitting there for a long time are not doing any good. So tomorrow, there's a wonderful session with Cynthia about utilizing category turns to leverage profits. So please check that out tomorrow at 9. Yeah.
9, and we'll have candy, she says.
Ah, darn it.
Missed the boat on that candy.
I'll be there.
I'm not as good as you guys. You have hands.
Cynthia, you really are as good or better than me.
So here are some of the tips, which some of them we also already mentioned, but
Can I ask
be
a
prompt on
clarifying
ordering. Go ahead.
Can you give the official definition of category turns?
I think we might want to save that for Cynthia because it is, I don't know.
One of the things that they're
How to
talking about at
figure
the
it out.
session tomorrow. Yeah.
So it's how frequently you're selling something within a category is the basic.
Another thing we haven't touched on yet is B2B, which is business to business discounts. So oftentimes publishers have a different discount schedule for business to business orders, which are books that are going to all one customer. And usually they have specific things like they're going to be given away, they're not to be sold individually, and they're also non-returnable. So if you have customers like people buying within your community all at a group, different businesses, and they're going to get like 25 or more copies of one book, you can get a better discount from the publisher if you order it through their business-to-business terms. And then that'll really help you out at the bottom if it's going to be something that you're not going to return, that you're selling to this person all at once. And again, they have tiers, so like 25 units is going to be whatever tier. 100 units is going to be an even better tier. 500 units is going to be an even better tier. So you really want to be working with your sales reps or your customer service reps with the publishers to make sure you're taking advantage of getting the highest discount, especially for those bulk orders too.
And similarly, some publishers have extra discount for book fairs as well. Yeah. Edelweiss is another.
Yeah, we should talk about Edelweiss for, so all of this is good information, but where do we start? We start with our front list orders with the publishers. So a really effective tool to see how your store is doing in general right at the beginning of your buying session is to make sure and take a look at the Edelweiss analytics tools. Now, I know there's going to be a representative from Edelweiss here who could kind of walk you through that a little bit more. This isn't really an Edelweiss session, but I wanted to mention how effective those tools are to give you a snapshot, and also you can do a deep dive through those and kind of see how your sections are performing against one another as you go into the buying season, like, oh, I buy too heavy on cookbooks, let me scale back this season. And also you can delve down deep into each publisher's catalog from the last season. So my best practice when I'm going into a buying season, I'm going to look at, let's say I'm doing a Random House fall front list catalog for 2024. I'm going to go into Edelweiss and look at the Random House fall 2023 catalog, and I can open up a little pie chart to see how many books did I buy that sold? How many books did I buy that sold well, that turned well? How many books did I buy that sold medium, turned medium? How many did I buy that did okay? And then how many didn't sell at all? 30%? Get it together. Rebecca, take it easy next time.
And make sure you keep your inventory fresh. You will see tomorrow on turns that how important it is to have that inventory keep turning, and it directly impacts your cost of goods sold.
And just really quickly on that last slide, there was a mention of small and university presses, which I'm not sure for anyone else in the room, but for our store have become a lot more important in the last couple of years. Definitely work with your reps, because way more often for small and university presses, you're running into minimums that hit both severely worse discounts and much higher shipping costs. And something that I know a lot of people can be a little nervous about doing, but if you're not buying a lot of inventory from a particular publisher, you really feel confident in the books that you're buying from them, it's worth considering going to non-returnable rather than returnable. I know it's scary. We're in like the one industry where you can get inventory and return it, as opposed to any of our sidelines and most other industries. But if you're confident in a book, that extra, we're not talking about discounts, but that extra amount that you get if you go to non-returnable in terms of percentage discount can be up to like double digits in terms of how much it increases your discount. So it's definitely worth considering.
And Josh, you mentioned returns. Returns are critical to get that ending inventory number down as well. If there's a book that's sitting around on your shelf not selling after 3 months, 6 months, certainly after a year, get rid of it. It's not working for you. Bring something else in that maybe is going to work better. It's important to have a really organized system for returns if you're going to keep your shelves fresh and keep your cash flow looking good, which all is going to contribute to this as well. I know for watermark books, what works for me is I have a schedule of returning to each publisher by month, and then I run reports on different things, like did we sell 0 of this in 6 months out? Is it sitting around with 2 or 3 copies, but we haven't sold it in a while? I can skim it down. Do I have something sitting around for a year that hasn't sold? Let's go. Let me take the opportunity to cull my shelf of stuff that isn't selling so I can bring new stuff in that might work better.
And we already talked about how to some of the things where you can increase price non-book items just to subsidize the cost of goods sold.
And on that slide was the toy fairs, of thinking too of not just about a catalog promo, but that if you actually go to places, sometimes there are promos at a gift show or a toy show.
And at book trade shows too, actually.
Trade show.
Yeah. Okay. And speak to your POS rep on Vendor Showcase about where to pull your, if you are not sure where to get your inventory, talk to your POS vendor. Most every POS system gives you an ability to pull out your inventory at any given time.
Yeah, the beauty part is you don't actually have to get out your calculator all the time. You can kind of just run a report in your POS. What were my cost of goods sold for this period of time? So that's great too.
And Josh and I both use IBIT-IE, right?
I use Booklog.
I also used IBIT-IE. One of the things that I know, at least NABA is doing, every week they publish the backlist specials from different publishers. So I don't know if your regional association is doing that, but that's a great place to make sure that you take advantage of every backlist special. There's always something going on, so keep an eye. If your regional association is not doing that, maybe you want to encourage them to do that. NABA does that every week.
We should do questions.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as you're asking questions, if you could please introduce yourself and tell us what store you're from, that'll help us get to know each other at the beginning of the conference.
Okay. Yeah. We can open up for questions.
And you can
Yeah,
just
could you
step up
please-
to the mic, and if you need us to have a room minder bring you the mic, just raise your hand and wave it. So
Which,
we,
I guess.
Hello, I'm Megan Erlin from the Riverside Bookstore in Oswego, New York. And I just wanted a little more information on how returns come out of your cost of goods sold. Because if I'm just looking at my inventory value and I've returned books, then my value is lower, but I did not sell those books. I returned them. So
They're coming out of that end of period inventory number. Does that make sense?
So,
let's bring up that slide with the
Yeah,
equation
so I guess
again,
what
if we
I'm-
could.
so
Yeah.
what,
And we'll, maybe I'll use the board. If you could bring up the slide, and we'll figure out where to put that in the carrot.
this one?
How about the one that's actually the numbers?
Yeah. There should maybe be a secret extra.
Here.
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, I was right. There you go. Perfect.
So there should be maybe a second set of parentheses next to that 25,000.
Yeah.
Minus what you returned.
Your ending in, taking is going to go in
Yeah.
a second.
Yeah, but what you've returned, even though, like, to us as booksellers, it's not cash back in our pocket, right? But it is liquid in the sense that it has gone back to the publisher, so it's not part of the goods that you have in your inventory. So.
I just added returns.
Yeah, so I mean, your 71,000 ending inventory is actually already subtracted the returns that you've made. Your POS system has already taken those books out of the systems. So in other words,
So like the 25,000 is, let's say you really bought 50,000, but you have already returned 25,000 before the end of the period. Does that make more sense?
I don't know about this.
any other question? Wow. You did a great job.
Or
Yeah.
maybe you haven't had enough candy yet.
Yeah.
Hey friends, I'm Cynthia from 4Kids Books and Toys. I'm the one who's bringing candy to the turn session tomorrow. What does ABACUS tell us about our stores and starting inventory every year as a ratio with cost of goods sold? We get real precious about our inventory, right? We hold on to it. We really like it. We're children's stores. We're like, we can't really be a children's store unless we have a complete shelf of Boynton. So I'm not returning that, right? Like that's credentialing. So what's the right number we should be looking at there compared to sort of overall how much we're turning?
Yeah.
What should I have in my store on January 1st without panicking?
Yeah. So traditionally, so average turn is 2.9. So let's say if you are selling $300,000, you should have 100,000 in inventory at least. So 2 points. So your inventory turns about 3 times every year. So look at your forecast, your sales, and it's times the turn. So if, once again, if your sales is 300,000 per year, your inventory should be approximately 100,000. There are some stores that do ton of business-to-business discounts. So be careful when you're calculating that, because they make turn look real good, because you buy something and goes right away. So I would factor those out if you can, especially things on, things, if some section looks great, it always used to happen in business for me. Business always, the terms look great, but when you evaluate, it's those books that sold from B2B. Average book is staying there for a long time. School sales are absolutely same. In summertime, right before the schools ends, a lot of schools used to finish their budget, they will buy a lot of young adult books, a lot of classics. The turns look great, but if you look behind the numbers, it gives you a real picture of what.
That's such a good point, PK, that our intuition should not, we shouldn't discredit our intuition, that just because a number says something somewhere, if you don't understand what went into getting that number, maybe dig a little bit deeper to say, does this make sense from what I thought I saw in my section? If you don't ever see someone shopping in your business section, but your turns look great, you're like, who is the ghost who's buying this?
Yeah.
And the ghost is your partnerships, business-to-business partnerships. So that doesn't mean that you need to expand your business section in your store. It means that you need to keep working on those partnerships for your business-to-business stuff, right?
I'll shout out once again, the Edelweiss analytics make it real easy to go in and see. Like if you're looking at your business section and you're like, oh, my turns are amazing, you can click in and see what is selling. Oh, yeah.
Like the actual title.
Right, I had
can see
that
the actual
500
title.
copy sale of that. So it's kind of, and then there's also this shelf report that you can download in Edelweiss, which is really handy.
Could we just see and how many people actually use Edelweiss and have the analytics, either the baseline? Okay, that's good. That's good. I feel like it's such an important tool, and I don't know how I would do my job without it, that I just really feel like it's important.
And even though I've been using Edelweiss since like 2007, I still do kind of schedule a little consultation with somebody at Edelweiss once a year to just go through my analytics, like just to remind myself, like, where do I need to tighten it up?
And to remember, too, that Edelweiss is the way our reps get a chance to see what's happening in our store before we tell them at the meeting. So it's a really helpful way to keep your relationship with your reps going when you're not actually seeing each other or talking to each other every day.
And I will say, just if you're not super comfortable with Edelweiss or you're more comfortable with your POS, certainly talk with your POS provider, because it's not as intuitive, but a lot of this information, this analytics information, can be pulled from your POS either natively or in the case of IBID, you can work together to make reports that pull this information. And in some ways, especially if you're looking at cost of goods for used inventory, remainders, sidelines, stuff like that, you're not going to be able to get that from Edelweiss necessarily. So you'll want to know how to get it from your POS anyway.
Yeah. One thing, there is also a session on budgeting for bookstores, but that also Edelweiss can tell you, let's say if an author is coming up with a new book, and you can look at the history from the previous book, how many do you want to bring at that particular initial order, and that guides what rest of the things you will buy. So, Edelweiss analysis helps you. So, for example, Stephen King, or next book is coming out. You notice that how many you do need to start with. You can look at it. It tells you how many you sold in first week, second week, or a month.
Yeah. I think we have another question over here.
This might actually be more appropriate for the turns discussion, but I figured it wouldn't hurt to ask. What are your thoughts on marking things on sale? So maybe this is more of a sidelines question, but in terms of keeping inventory around that's not selling as quickly as you would like at what point do you say, I'm going to cut my losses and start marking this down gradually and see if I can move it then? Do you have a certain kind of time frame? Is it more instinctive?
Yeah, we do definitely have a plan for marking down sidelines. That's another reason you want to kind of start your sidelines at the higher end, what your market is going to bear in your town, because you're not going to sell through and you can't return. So we kind of have, okay, I've got this order in 3 months, what do I have still sitting around? Let me mark those down a little bit. In another 6 months, maybe I'll take them down another few percentage points on a discount. And then has it been around like 9 months? Maybe I'm going to put it on the clearance section and just try to get it out of here.
For us, we also have an annual sale that's a neighborhood-wide sidewalk sale. So that's our kind of reality check of as we go through the store preparing for that, we just make sure we check everything. And if the other thing about sidelines is if you can't make a good display of them, they're probably not going to sell. So even if they've been selling very well, I might put them in the sale pile for the sidewalk sale just because I'm not going to be able to make a display with just one puzzle.
Yeah, and at Print, it's a mix of intuition and 6 months. After about 6 months, we mark stuff down.
Is that something you're going on tomorrow, Cynthia? Yeah, there are many ways. You can bundle. So yes, it'll be covered in the turn session tomorrow, but there are many ways. And, there are some books that only discounted works if you have a pile and if you're down to one. So Cynthia will cover all of that tomorrow.
Can I complicate things just a little bit?
Do
in the sense of cost of goods sold, we have a very clear our equation, but as we're talking about the things of how we make decisions, I also just wanted to think about the fact that as we're talking about turns, I think about the rent that each item takes up in my store. And so just thinking about that's a way to think about how expensive something is too, is how much space it's taking up in your store and what displays aren't possible if that's there. So I often think about that of like, if I have 6 really big dinosaur encyclopedias, I don't have room to show that space book that I just got in because I can't face it out on that shelf. So I have to think about how do I make room for that. And so it's kind of, for me, that's the rent of a book on my shelf.
I think that also fits really well with the credentialing idea of how much is this book paying its rent by turning, if we want to talk about books paying their own rent, or is this book paying its rent by being here, showing what kind of store we are, and making other books turn more? So a way, that's a reason that when you're looking at turn, or when we're looking at turn, generally look at a category rather than specific titles, because I think everyone in the room knows this. Any book, no matter how well it's selling, you can come up with a reason to not carry it anymore. And any book, no matter how much it's not selling, you can justify keeping it. I think that's true for me in the children's section more than any other section, because I have such affection for books that I read as a kid and no one reads anymore. But, is having the first book I ever remember reading, Caps for Sale, is having that on the shelf helping sell other stuff, and either in the data or to myself, I can justify it. I advocate looking at the data, but if we're being honest here.
And sometimes you can have an accountability partner for that. Like when you're doing polls, I sometimes do my poll report and then I have somebody else look at it because, yes, I do need to have a book for that reading level on that topic, but I don't need 3.
I also make bargains with myself on returns. Like if I'm pulling a report and this book that I'm in love with, do I really need the David Godine Secret Garden? I have 4 other editions of Secret Garden, but I love this one. If I don't sell it by the time I'm pulling next month, maybe. So now is my opportunity to go try to sell that book to a customer within the next couple of weeks.
I love these mind games too with restocking.
Yeah.
That I will put things on the hold list of, am I going to restock this? And it's kind of like when I'm doing personal shopping and I say to myself, well, if that's still in the store next time I go in the store, I'll buy it. And I could say to myself, if no one has requested it or one of my colleagues hasn't wanted to sell it, we have a restock note that people can say, I went to sell this and it wasn't there. If I haven't had that little prompt by the next time I do the order, maybe I don't need to restock it. Mm-hmm. That'll keep my cost of goods lower if I'm not buying things I don't need to restock.
Yeah.
Did you have a question? No, the other, go ahead, please.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah with Village Books and Paper Dreams. A part of my struggle, and especially looking at this formula, which is new to me and I find fantastic, is knowing when we use cost numbers and when we use retail numbers, because sales is retail, but
Right.
in something like QuickBooks, cost is the rule. So when do we convert from retail to cost, and when are costs the more important, and when is retail the more important?
Right, so for these formulas, we're looking at cost. But then when we go to the slide that's how do you get your gross margin, that's your retail minus your cost.
Yes. I mean, so it's 53% of your net retail sales. Yeah. So, but for inventory calculation, we always use inventory at cost. Yes.
I wanted to mention one other thing that I forgot to mention when I was talking about buying direct from publishers, and this is a conversation I had with a news store that was opening up in a neighboring town. She had some questions for me about Ingram Wholesale versus Ingram Publishing Services, and I just wanted to mention briefly that you can get a better discount by buying the Ingram Publishing Services books separately to get that publisher direct discount, even though they're all Ingram. If you order the wholesale side separately than the publisher side, again, you're going to get that better discount.
Did you have a question? Do you want to come up to the mic?
So I'm assuming you're all Excel geniuses because you're managing all of this stuff outside of the POS in spreadsheets. And do you have a strategy for that? Because that's managing all of that in Excel sometimes makes me crazy. What's a good strategy?
I think a template. Just I use the same template for every publisher, for every season. And I'm tracking things with my buying with the same template I started. I tweak it, but I think find a template that works for you and give yourself some time, a season that you work on your template.
Yep.
Go ahead. No, you.
This is maybe like the only good case use I have found for ChatGPT and AI is that I have found over the last couple months that they've added the ability for you to upload spreadsheets into it, including, in our case, the Excel spreadsheets that we pull out of our point of sale system. And you can tell it how you want columns labeled. You can tell it how you want data organized. You can ask it to process certain formulas. And it will do that to the spreadsheet, but also the answer that it kicks back out will tell you what the actual formulas are for using it. It has been a game changer for me. The last thing I want to do is sound like an AI evangelist because I think that generally it is terrible. But for spreadsheets, it's been great. And it's recently, ChatGPT has started accessing the Google Books API. So for getting lists of books from schools and stuff like that, you can upload a list of titles and ask it to kick you back ISBNs, or upload a list of ISBNs and ask it to give you columns with publishers, author names, titles, stuff like that. It's incredible in terms of making the work easier of doing that stuff.
Josh, I nominate you to lead a session on that next time.
Noted.
Happily.
All right. Everybody put that in your survey.
Go ahead, please.
Hello again, it's Megan from the Represent. This is probably an ABACUS question, but co-op in ABACUS, I remember it being recommended to not be taken out of cost of goods, but taken out of advertising, which is not what we traditionally had done, at least on QuickBooks. But like in our point of sale, I don't think co-op is documented at all, because when we receive the books, that's when we put the margin in. So I wonder if you had any thoughts on the co-op in this.
That's exactly because we want to get a true picture of what co-op is. Basically, publishers are giving you money to advertise or to display books. So it's really not part of cost of goods sold, publishers will be very happy to say, well, look, we're giving you extra 4%, but that's to market the books, not as a cost of goods sold. So that's why we emphasize that co-op be separated into the marketing expense instead of cost of goods sold. They're two different things, in my opinion.
That said, oftentimes publishers will have like a little co-op price break or a co-op extra dollars when you're buying stuff in the front list, depending on the publisher, how they do it, if it's an extra discount or what. So you can take a look at, hey, here's a book, maybe I want 3 copies of it, but then it's a really popular author, maybe they have an extra discount at 6, then you can make those decisions like, is this extra little bump going to help me if I bring in a few more initially, or is it too risky to bring in a few more initially because they might just be sitting around. So you can make those decisions on a case-by-case basis too.
One thing I'll say is throughout we've been emphasizing that if the book doesn't work, return it. Yes, it does cost shipping to send things back, but if you look at the big picture, all the rent you're spending on that book sitting there for a long time, you'll see money spent on shipping book back is better than having it stay on your shelf and paying rent for that for a long period of time.
And
so
again,
yes, it does add up to the cost of goods sold, but it is worth it.
And again, also here's where buying smarter in the first place is going to really help. If you take advantage of the tools and don't bring in a whole ton of stuff that you then have to spend a ton of shipping returns, if you can kind of tighten it up on both sides, then you'll be in good shape.
I think we should put our contact info up because I think we're at time.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh. Yes, we are out of time. Thank you.
So much fun talking about math.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA website at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!